Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. This is the Aspen City Council regular meeting for March 28th, 2023. That is a call to order. Could we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Councillor Doyle. Councillor Howenstein.
Present.
Councillor Mesereau.
Present.
Councillor Richards. Here. Mayor Tory.
I'm here as well. We have no public appearances scheduled for this evening, so it'll bring us right to citizens' comments and petitions, an opportunity for members of the public to address City Council on items that are not on our agenda for discussion. We ask that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes so everybody has a fair and equal opportunity to speak here tonight. And with that, I'll open it up. Any members of the public that wish to speak, come on up.
Patty Kravitz from Centennial Condominiums here again, not having a conversation, but thank you for your time, and thank you especially to Skippy and Rachel for your years of service to our city, county, and elsewhere, and I'm sure you'll continue your valuable work in your communities going forward. I wish you both well. So to answer one question, we are here addressing the city instead of the county because the city via ACRA controls our deed restrictions, and that is the remaining element in the lawsuit. If you want to work with the county toward a solution, that would be fine with us. But what isn't fine with us is the city staff's continued belief in the lies spewed by Barry Crook, blaming the Centennial homeowners for the conditions of the units. It's why our pre-lawsuit talks failed in 2014 and 2015. It just went nowhere. It's why we had to file the lawsuit and why we're still in it today. City staff refused to hear what we had to say in a meeting in October of 2021, where we had hoped to make the case for alternate solutions to our catastrophic situation. But the truth was too much for them to bear, so they shut us down. Now, we understand that executive sessions about us may be continuing, but you still refuse to work with us. We put a stay on the litigation for more than 3 years, but nothing cooperative happened. Our only recourse is to reinstate the lawsuit while legal costs, a waste of Centennial homeowner and city taxpayer money, continue to climb, and the cost to remedy the condition of the property are blowing up. There seems to be a belief that a solution for Centennial must apply to all ACRA properties. We remind you that our situation is unique. Our property was built without any government money. The problems are not a result of homeowner neglect or deferred maintenance. They were the result of poor design and shoddy construction. They were disastrous to begin with. A commission is collected off of every sale. You have a responsibility to sell safe and livable properties. Please protect our homes and the families that live in them. Don't build more housing until you fix ours. Stop talking behind our backs and work with us. Stop wasting everyone's time and money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one comment. Barry Crook used to be Assistant City Manager. He's passed away, and I'd appreciate it if his name was not besmirched. He cannot be here or is not available to counteract the accusation of lies by Barry Crook. So I'd appreciate it if you would just respect his memory. Thank you.
Other members of the public this evening, Ed, come on up.
Ed Cross, Centennial issue. Reiterate what Patty said regarding Skippy and Rachel. I know they've worked very hard, particularly on employee housing. And the comment there by Ward regarding Barry Crook, yes, he has passed on. I can affirm that many of the things that he has said were frankly untrue. I'm just going to read this into the record. I gave a copy to Nicole. This was a guest commentary for the Aspen Times from the Board of Centennial in its entirety, and it's headlined Correcting Misinformation About Centennial Homeowners' Condos. At a recent City Council meeting, City Council member Rachel Richards responded to a statement about the horrific state of the Centennial ownership buildings during public comment. Richards asked that since the Centennial rental complex under original developer Sam Brown's ownership was able to repair its buildings, shouldn't the 92 individual owners of the Centennial condos be able to do the same thing? We'd like to explain the stark difference between the two. For 35 years, the 147 rental apartments generated revenue for Brown as he charged the maximum rent allowed by ACRA. This was his for-profit business. Based on the recent $50 million sale of his property to a private company, Brown was motivated by a big windfall to make his property attractive and saleable to prospective buyers. This sale also explains why every time word would go out about the poor design and shoddy construction of his buildings, he quickly responded about their superior quality, falsely refuting known evidence. He couldn't take the chance of having his property lose value if the truth were known. The 92 owners of Centennial HOA do not have a revenue stream. These are our homes and not real estate investments as dictated by APSHA's charter. Most are still owned by lenders as we are paying off mortgages. The 3% annual appreciation APSHA allowed most homeowners is wiped out by our interest rates. Ms. Richards also tried to argue that many complexes have similar needs, like upgrades to electrical system. This is not the type of need burdening Centennial. Centennial has critical design flaws and structural failures. Issues like plumbing and electrical are already addressed regularly. Centennial HOA has diligently maintained its property or its buildings would have been uninhabitable long ago. Our homeowners are paying among the highest monthly dues of any APSHA HOA because of the need for critical structure repairs in addition to regular maintenance. Ms. Richards acknowledged that Brown had to repair his rental buildings. He spent $4.5 million over 15 years on the same repairs our buildings need. In 2014, the city contracted the same company, Aspen Builders, to provide a cost estimate and 6-year plan for the owner units, which came in at $3.24 million. When directed by City Council to collaborate on a shared resolution with Centennial HOA, City staff refused to discuss it and continued to deny the facts. Centennial's flaws should have been a non-issue by now. The current repair estimate is $11 million. Despite the repairs on the rental units and numerous expert studies, Brown and the current and former city staff claimed there was nothing wrong with these buildings. Did Brown spend millions of dollars tearing off the exterior walls and repairing the water-damaged structure of his rental buildings because they were well-maintained and only needed minor touch-ups? How is this even close to the same scenario that the homeowners face? A landlord trying to maintain his failing property so he can offload it to an unwitting buyer for a big payout, versus an HOA of 92 individual owners of devalued condos in which deed restrictions severely limit equity and prevent any compensation for critical capital investments. Aspen's housing program allows for poor quality housing to be built, but then requires owners to correct the defects at free market rates while specifically disincentivizing investment in critical repairs? Why is this city letting Burgeon Hold, the new owners of the rental buildings, tear down and rebuild the existing apartments that are supposedly in perfect condition and build 60 free market units on land that is zoned for only deed-restricted housing? No one living here is profiting from owning a deed-restricted condo. These buildings are a sinkhole for our wages as we struggle just to keep the roofs over our heads and waterfalls from our living rooms. Where are we supposed to get the millions necessary to keep our buildings standing when our deed restrictions limit the value of our buildings and therefore prevent us from qualifying for large bank loans? They specifically disallow us from recouping any investment made to correct the incompetent design and repair the ensuing damage it has caused. It is egregious to ask a city to pitch in. Is it egregious to ask a city to pitch in for the first time to provide safe housing when they inherited these 92 condos with no subsidy or outlay of public funds and have collected a commission on every sale for 30 years?
Ed?
Yep, got it.
It's been quite a couple minutes past some time there, so do you have more pages there? Is
That's
that,
it.
that's it? That was the end? Perfect timing
It's
then.
just what it appeared in.
All right, I appreciate that.
And I gave Nicole.
Thank you. Yeah, you may if you'd like.
Yeah, no, just one clarification. I appreciate your comments, but this council has not approved any demolition of those units, no redevelopment, nor indicated any support or desire for anything approaching that.
Thanks. Other members of the public? Doctor? Please introduce yourself for the record.
John Prunskis. First of all, I just want to thank the city council and the current mayor and the former mayors for, when I was the honorary consul here, for the reception that you guys gave us and the stuff that we accomplished. So thank you for that. Now I'm a public citizen, so for better or for worse, I can now speak on issues that are important to the city. So thank you for allowing me the few minutes to talk. And what I'm going to be speaking about is the contemplated Park Avenue repavement project. And I sent some pictures, and I apologize, I wasn't quite sure of the format of how that should be sent. So in your inboxes, you have certain pictures, which I don't think I have to go through in a sequential point now. You just have them in your records. And there's just about 3 or 4 points that I just wanted to make so that you can kind of understand on why I and my neighbors on the west side of Park Avenue are opposed to it. So in the study, there was mentioned that no stop sign is needed at the junction southbound on Midland and Park Avenue. I would speak otherwise. Some of you have been out there. This is a blind turn, and it's my understanding there have not been any pedestrian vehicular accidents, but there have been motor vehicle accidents because the homes that are around this blind curve, when they pull out, neither the buses or traffic on Park Avenue southbound can see those vehicles, nor can those vehicles pulling out see the traffic. And periodically you will hear, a horn blaring to avoid an accident. So I'd like you guys to take a look at that. If there is, my position and those of the many neighbors around me is perhaps nothing needs to be done except put in that stop sign. You guys may have other opinions, there may be other issues, but if it's for what I've been told is pedestrian protection when there hasn't been any accidents, and indeed the current sidewalks that are on that street, they are covered in snow from October to May. So pedestrians walk in the street even with those sidewalks. You might not be aware of that. Currently, again, if this project does go through, if I want to emphasize one thing for you guys to remember, it is water drainage, water drainage. There are several homes, including my own, that if I had a prop of an oil funnel, I would pull it out right now. And that's what we see would occur. Right now, the intended project is to have a peak in the center of Park Avenue, so more water would be diverted to the downhill homes, and those that are even further downhill, the driveways would literally act like an oil funnel that you pour oil in your car and increase the water load. The homes do have drainage systems around their homes to accommodate the current loads of water, but from what we've seen from the design, and in asking specifically, what have you guys calculated as the increased water load, those calculations have not been made. So just more research, again, needs to be done if the project is going to go forward, or as I have said, perhaps all it needs is a stop sign. And then in the final issue is there is going to be, as I understand it, and I think we all understand it, whoever built these homes years ago built their homes in city property, and somehow those got approved, and now the current owners have to face that reality. And so some of the homes have heated driveways, and there's going to be loss of parking in those driveways. There's been no budget, we've been told, for mitigation of loss of parking in the heated driveway system, et cetera. So that's all I have to say. In summary, we think a stop sign is needed southbound at Park Avenue in Midland. If we think that's all that needs to be done, but if another issue is perhaps just one-way traffic southbound on Park, if you want to decrease the risk to any pedestrian traffic, it is a blind curve, so there has been vehicle-to-vehicle problems. Water is the key issue that has not been researched, not only as it cascades down the street and what damage it can do to existing homes, but also overwhelming the current drainage system of those homes, and then any mitigation that can be provided for loss of parking created by any widening the road. Thank you very much for your attention. And as I said, I have those pictures. I don't think it was necessary for my discussion, but at least you have them, and they might make more sense after this. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Todd. And if you wait just one second, have you been visited by our engineering team? They've been by to speak with you?
Yes, they're very polite, they're very nice people, and I voiced all the concerns that I voiced with you today, and I've gotten some replies that were specifically said with the stop sign. Initially, they are now looking into it based on what we've had, and again, I know some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a true blind curve. With regards to the water drainage, they have acknowledged that there have not been studies done of the water drainage. And so specifically, for example, the new Park Avenue proposal, if it goes through, is to have a peak center. And so my question was, how did you determine, like, what's the degree of peak that is going to optimize water drainage off of it? And they said, well, we really didn't do that study. This is just acceptable peak levels. So the water drainage has not been studied. The next answer I received with regards to the private drainage systems around the homes that do collect the existing water said that there is no budget to enlarge those systems to account for the increased water. And the final issue, I believe, was due to the now decrease in size of the driveway with existing snowmelt, and both service vehicles and other vehicles, now we don't have that parking. There's an opportunity to widen the space for an enlarged space, and our request was, okay, can you just kind of put the snow melt under that new space? It's not going to increase any energy usage because you're taking out part of it, and just we'd ask to move on. So though all the questions I brought today were brought up, and the reason I came to you is because the answers that we received were not satisfactory. Okay?
I appreciate that. We have members of that team that are here. Council is aware of your concerns as well as some other neighbors there. They will be bringing that back to
Sure.
us, and we'll have a close eye on it for you. And I appreciate you coming here today. I want to take just 1 second and introduce you to the audience a little bit more than you did in your opening statements. John Prunskis, and correct me when I get the terminology wrong, but the Lithuanian consulate has been here and located in Aspen for how many years?
10 years and 2 days.
Thank you, 10 years and 2 days. And your title is Consul General?
Consul of Lithuania, yes.
So the Lithuanian Consulate General, John Prunskis, has been here in Aspen for 10 years and 2 days. He's been a wonderful representative, not just for his country, but as an ambassador. And it's been a pleasure to have you in our community, and your communications through your official role have been just fantastic. I really appreciate everything that you've done in that sense, but also just a great Aspen citizen as well. And so I just wanted to let everybody know a little bit more about you.
That's very kind, Mayor, and thank you. And you guys have been great. I've been coming to Aspen since 1975, and I will continue to be coming here. Just I'll be a private citizen now going forward, and look forward to spending more time actually with all of you guys, because you're all good people. And I almost want to stress that, I may believe I said this, but the people on this project who I've dealt with have been polite, professional, so I have no criticism of them. It's just more information is needed.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
that. Yeah, Ward?
Just an additional, John served, 12 years in the parliament in Lithuania?
Yeah, I served 3 4-year terms representing 900,000 Lithuanian Americans in the Parliament of Lithuania. So I have an awareness of kind of what you guys have to process.
Yeah, times a lot. But, and I did send a letter of inquiry to the project, people that are in charge of this project, specifically asking to allay my concerns about water drainage coming down into the, 315 and 317 park.
Right, and also I believe to the south of those addresses as well.
Right,
Yeah.
and a warrant study for a traffic signal or a stop sign around the corner. And I do know, I've backed out of that driveway. I know that it is a totally blind corner.
It's a form of Russian roulette.
Let's not go there.
Oh, sorry.
But, engineering hasn't had an opportunity to get back to me, but it is a concern for us. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
All right, thank you for your time.
Other members of the public this evening? Look online quickly here. And one more call? All right, we'll move on our agenda then. I want to take this opportunity just to encourage anybody that cares to come to citizen comment and petition. We welcome all kinds of input, and this is a great opportunity. So we encourage it and we welcome it as much as possible. I'm going to go to council members' comments. I have maybe a couple of statements, but maybe others will follow up with those. So I'll start with council members' comments at this time.
Mike? I think this is perhaps Skippy's last meeting, and I, again, appreciate the 4 years of service that you've given and the undying support for workforce housing that you've exhibited and worked for, and for 4 years representing Aspen's interest on the APSHA board. We'll miss you, Skippy. Thank you for your help. And I think, Rachel, you have one more after this? Well, you have EOTC and BOCC and ASPCA and a bunch of other initials. So again, for over 30 years, I appreciate your service.
I appreciate that, Ward. It's good.
Thank you, Ward.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot here. I don't really appreciate being the focus of Centennial's ire, and I'm sorry that the conversation is a little short-lived here. I will try to just simply make the point that I do believe that the problems of Centennial are not unique to Centennial. And there are a lot of projects that were built without any public subsidy, any taxpayer dollars. And actually, Hunter Creek was without taxpayer dollars, which was the spawning parcel for Centennial. I used my homeowners association and the many issues beyond which I did not go into great detail, including failing building foundations and things like that, because it was cheaply built rental housing. But, you know, there's a big challenge here. And I have been an advocate for using housing dollars to work towards repairing older units for a long time now. But the insistence that it's all going to be public dollars and that it's not homeowners contributing as well, I don't think will fly in the future. And I think that there does need to be a system put in place that deals effectively and fairly and equitably across the board. You know, we look at what's happening now, say, with preserving the homes and the homeowners at Phillips Curve, which was a mobile home park, which hasn't even begun its rebuild of the sewer or the type of money the county will be needing to put into that to make it habitable, kind of runs somewhere around $9 million beyond the original purchase price. But those homes would all be gone. It would all be single-family homes if they hadn't stepped forward. But that's the type of multiple issues that they're dealing with. There are any number of units that have come into the inventory that had no public dollars at all because they were mitigation for growth, the same way that Centennial was mitigation for growth when 8 or 9 of the buildings of Hunter Creek were turned into free market units. So all I've been trying to say is I do think that there needs to be a look across the board, because whatever is done for Centennial will be precedent-setting for all other 80 HOAs. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I think that myself, in repairing or trying to prepare the issues at Hunter Creek, I'm not looking back to say, oh boy, this was built really lousy 60 years ago, which it was. It's something that we do maintenance as well. And I think that a step for this board or for APSHA is really to try to get that detailed information about what various HOAs are doing and what they're facing. I think you're going to see a request coming from APSHA to the city to fund new HOA capital reserve programs and find out where all the units are in condition right now. But that's about all I can say. I have a lot of empathy. I don't dislike or I don't want to be mean to Centennial, but I think that does have to be some give and take. And you can describe from your side the many years of we didn't get the help we wanted. And I think the city, APSHA, and the county could describe many years of, boy, we didn't see them move an inch. And I appreciate the next letter to the editor that you'll send in with my name because I dared to say something. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Skippy.
Yeah, this will be my last in-person meeting, for sure. Don't know if it'll be my last meeting, TBD, if I will be there, but I hope to be on Zoom. I'll certainly be at some other functions, but while I'm in the room, I just want to say thank you. It's just been such a, not always easy, not always fun, but such an honor and a pleasure, and it's been great to serve with all of you. Rachel, for a service that started when I was just putting together words, although some would say I'm still just putting together words.
Learning to spell them.
True, no, I'm certainly not, but the world is catching up to my spelling, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And we've gotten rid of all the vowels now. It's pretty fun. But thank you for everything you've done for the community, and to you guys who started in service long before and were part of the reason why I got to show up in a town that means everything to me, and it's just awesome. And the same is true of so many on our staff who have been here long, long before me and will be here long after me. So thank you for everything that all of you do on a daily basis and have done. Despite our gripes or our momentary displeasures, out that window is one of the most special places that has ever existed on earth. And it's just truly an honor to be part of that in some small way. And you guys all are too.
Yeah.
So thank each of you for your role in that. To the excitement of some and disdain of many, I will be around for a long time. So I wish you guys nothing but the best. And boy, I truly hope that you guys and Bill and Sam are so successful that I never think about doing this again. I truly hope that. And if I can be I truly hope that. And if I can be of service or support to you guys in your efforts in any way, you know where to reach me, and you know I'm always down for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your enthusiasm and all your passion you've brought to this 4 years.
Thanks, Rachel.
Meant a lot.
Thanks.
I'll start my comments also by acknowledging Rachel and Skippy. Rachel, we
Hey,
will
come
see
on, I'm here for another meeting.
We'll see you again. I understand. Skippy, you will not. I do want you to know that, you know, we have some tokens of our appreciation for your service, and we'll get those to you when you return. You know, Skippy, you have been a very valuable part of this council and the direction that we've had over the last 4 years. I am very appreciative for what you represent and what you've brought to the table. It is a combination and a team that we have up here, and you have definitely been a part of that team and a very appreciative part of that team. Yeah, the hope is that maybe things are going so well that you don't feel.
I'm looking for that.
I'm not as hopeful on that perhaps, but nonetheless, my appreciation for you is forever, and I know you are not going anywhere, so. I want to address Centennial real quickly. There were a few misstatements in what was said. You know, number one being the characterization that we are coming from a basis of faulting Centennial residents at all is just not the case. That's not how our conversations are, or how we characterize it at all. Yes, the answer is yes, Centennial, and this issue was on our last executive session, but because we continue to talk about it, we continue to look for opportunities, and we're not going to stop that. It is limited dialogue with you in the room because we do have a pending lawsuit, and that makes it difficult. One thing I will say is I wish some of you guys were at the table over the last 20 years when I have been negotiating with some other members of your HOA board that just didn't come to the table in the same spirit that you are. I'll share that with you. And I really appreciate that you guys are here now, and it may be impactful and helpful, so I really appreciate you being here. For my own comments this evening, I am short on them, mostly because I had one heck of a day starting off with ACRA this morning. But a highlight of my day today was doing some volunteer work for the Aspen Elks Lodge. The Aspen Elks Lodge right now is hosting the disabled veterans in town. So I squeezed in my lunch hour to go down to Basalt and assist with a lunch where they are doing bike riding events and fishing events. I wish I could invite all of you to come out and volunteer a little bit. It is a very uplifting and powerful moment to be a part of this. But we have a lot of volunteers from the Elks Lodge membership, so that's not necessary. But if any of you are moved to want to come participate, we'll find a spot for you. So please, if that's something of interest, stop by the Elks Lodge and let them know that you're interested in taking part. They're here till Saturday, so there's plenty of opportunity and a lot of fun to be had. Only other comment is avalanche danger. I want everybody to be aware that there are some funky conditions out there. What we've seen for temperatures and moisture content this year is unlike what we've seen in past years. And in our local area, we've had a couple of losses recently. So for all of those friends and family and neighbors out there that like to get out into the backcountry, please do it with utmost caution at this time of year. This snow is heavy and not something to mess around with. With that, I look for agenda amendments. I see none. The city manager had to step out for a moment.
She did. She asked me to just indicate she would pass her comments right now.
With that, I will also put in here missing council member. John Doyle was in contact with me today regarding all agenda items. and any input that he wanted to share. He wanted to share that he is on spring break with his daughter, so his time is being spent with family right now. That brings us to board reports. Anybody with a board report to share?
Yeah, really briefly, we're going to be having an ACRA meeting next week to really move forward with some of the details on the right sizing and those sort of programs. Skippy is going to be zooming in to the extent possible, and I will be there for the quorum and for the vote. But what I wanted to bring up to the board and to staff is that we have had a citizen come before us a couple of times to the ACRA board regarding construction defects in the 7th and Main project, right behind the one, and that the stairway and to the second floor seems to be separating from the building. That was built, I don't know, when Frank Peters was in council or the year after that, kind of, so quite a while ago. It's probably about a 30-year-old building. And again, I don't have any further details on that, but it's something that they have brought to the ACRA board, and ACRA board doesn't really do construction or repairs or look into these things. And again, I'd say that's why my comments were more that it's about all the projects needing something or a review of something, and they certainly will age out over time. I have more than once with this board and with the ACRA board talked about the challenges of maintaining anything. You know, David Byrne says things fall apart, it's scientific. And that's what's happening to a lot of our older housing units. The real challenge is capping incomes. And when you're selling to people of more of a limited income and you're capping appreciation, I've tried to use our rental projects as an example where capital infusion beyond the maximum rent has been necessary to maintain, whether it's Truscott or Country Inn or the Maralts. And so I do encourage a real housing retreat and capital reserve questions type of retreat in the future with the new boards. But that was something they've asked us to bring to the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually do have one.
Yep.
Just Northwest COG, fairly brief. John spent like half the meeting. They did one-to-one calls to city managers and county managers instead of doing a survey. And so just got some good statistical information on challenges, success of organizations, kind of what's going on regionally. Had some chat about climate and water health, funding opportunities from IIJA and IRA. So if you guys want more details on that, you can email and let me know. And we talked a little bit about electric vehicle goals, place to place, and got an update on the vintage program. And pop quiz, what is the third fastest aging state in America? If you guess Colorado, surprisingly, you're right.
How about that?
That's all.
We're all aging at the same rate individually.
That's correct, Ward. Thank you.
I could argue that, actually.
Time is not, time is relative and entropy is real. We're learning all kinds of science today.
Thank you for that update. Like I said, I started my day at ACRA board meeting, and Matthew Gillen was our presenter today.
Nice.
Yes. He did not do maybe a traditional presentation on fine details. Instead, really looked for a conversational approach and allowed members of the board to ask him questions and give input more than anything. I have a series of notes here. I don't need to go into them because it's a lot of the same comments and questions that we hear when it comes to housing and the housing program in general. So I'll share those with you at another time. No need to go into them now, but it was a really great conversation. Actually, the whole meeting today I thought was really great on all the topics that we touched on. A lot of it was about the housing summit that took place last week that several of us were at. Actually, all four of us were at. So with that, we'll move on to our consent. Yes, do you have a board report?
Yeah, I had two reports.
Thank you.
we had a CoA retreat, looking at setting a strategic plan for 2023 through 2026, and broke into groups, and we had 6 goals. We combined a couple of them. There are now 5 goals, and we'll continue to work on it with our values of environmental justice, accountability, action, innovation, and collaboration. I won't go over all of those 5 goals, but one of them, 40% of core initiatives are directed to the disadvantaged and essential workforce communities by 2025. And there was some discussion about the term disadvantaged. Economically challenged, Latino, however we want to define it, but 40% of energy is going directed in that direction. I'll have a more thorough report back when we've solidified those goals for the next 3 years. And following that, there was a RAFTA, again, a planning session for our annual retreat. We had a meeting prior to the housing summit and wanted to loop back after the housing summit. Everybody that's on that subcommittee was in attendance all day for the housing summit, and a lot of it is about Latino access, about housing, more about housing, and then we talked about housing. But that really is the crux of some of the challenges RAFTA is facing, and we'll be spending the better part of a day coming up, I think in June, on a retreat for RAFTA. But those are the 2 report backs I have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ward. With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar tonight is resolution number 40, Parks Fleet Replacement with Deere and Company. Resolution 41, Temporary Pavement Art Pilot Project. Resolution 42, Grants Program Professional Services Contract. Resolution 43, Rec Department Business Planning. Resolution 45, Benefit Broker Contract. Resolution 46, Master Agreement with the Aspen Chamber Resort Association. Resolution number 47, Burlingame Early Childhood Education Center Contract. Resolution number 48, a contribution to Aspen Valley Land Trust for the Cobb's Property Conservation. And we also have board and commission appointments, 2 of those, as well as the draft minutes from Valentine's, February 14th. Items to be pulled on this one. I'm going to actually request that we pull and vote on resolution number 47, separate from the consent calendar. And Ward, you wanted to pull the resolution number 41, Temporary Pavement Art Pilot Project. Are there any others?
No.
No. Okay. We'll start with resolution number 41.
This, for the public, this is a project coming up this summer for some street painting, actually, art on the streets. It's an extension of a goal of bringing arts to the people, and I just had a couple of concerns. One of them being a bicyclist, and I'm assuming that this has been addressed, but I know how slippery some of the paint on streets can be when it rains, so I want to make sure that any paint that is being used for these art projects is not going to get really slippery in the summertime when bicyclists are, and even pedestrians. That's a safety issue. Another concern was that there was a lengthy report saying that this is increased safety, pedestrian safety. And it occurs to me that the other end of the Hyman Mall is an area that has more safety concerns than in front of the Wheeler, and ask if you've considered that. I have 2 more concerns, and I'll give it to you. One of them is the Aspen Ideas Festival is given full control of the content of of the artwork to reflect Aspen community values. I just want to comment on your comments on that. It's relevant to the Aspen community, is I think what the memo says. And then the final one is that it's an impact on budget item 40117, a capital project, which was approved as part of our budget process. And it is the resealing joints on concrete pads. This maintenance will increase longevity of the existing concrete pads. And there was mention in the memo that funding for this would come from that line item. And I'm concerned what the impact is on the rest of town for those, that line item, and how, is there gonna be a lack of attention to the rest of town, or, so those are my concerns that I wanted to have a discussion about. And I looked up what Boulder has done. They have some awesome crosswalks and some really nice artwork that has been done on it, but if you could address my concerns on the paint types, the location, content, and the effect on 4117 capital project.
Thank you, Councilmember Howenstein. And those are, we will certainly, before we answer those concerns, I would like to recognize this project team that has been put together for this innovative project. And to start out with, I have PJ Murray, who's a project manager with the engineering team. We also have in the audience Ava Hartman from the Aspen Ideas Festival, sitting in the back here. And then also as support is myself, Trish Aragon, and then also Diane Foster has been great support on this great project. So with that, I'll have PJ answer your concerns.
We also have Sarah Roy on our team. That's okay. She's
yeah.
also on spring break, so.
I'm so sorry.
She's on vacation, she's not following this.
She's
watching the
been
meeting.
very helpful through this whole process. I know she was in front of council 2 weeks ago, I believe, so she's been a really great member of this team. So I think the first question was about the slip resistance material. So we've consulted with the city of Fort Collins and the city of Boulder, trying to determine what has worked and what hasn't worked for their programs, and we are modeling after them. Fort Collins recommended that we add a slip-resistant aggregate material to the surface, and so we will do the same thing here to ensure that it's not slippery when wet. The second question, I believe, was about the location selection. So we chose this location. We looked at a handful of locations in town within the core. This one stood out for a few reasons. It's an iconic intersection. We have the dancing fountain, the Ped Mall's end here, and the Wheeler Opera House, which is definitely a hub for arts within our community. And this is a public art piece, so we found that fitting. This street and this intersection sees high pedestrian use, but it doesn't see quite as high vehicular traffic as some of our other intersections. And when we spoke with Boulder and Fort Collins, they were finding that vehicle traffic wears these down the quickest. And so we decided for a pilot project, the first time we're testing this, we would like to choose somewhere where it may last a little bit longer, see what types of paint we like, how does the community respond to this? So that was the second reason. And then another reason is the Ideas Festival is hosting evening talks at the Wheeler the week after we hope to install this. And so it's a great way for them to showcase this. And they also will be offering a free, open to the public community event around education on public arts. So we wanted to be able to tie that all together. So this location stood out for us.
And the capital project, 40117?
So that budget is set up for routine maintenance of concrete pads in town, and this happens to be one of a few. The S-curves are we have some concrete bus pads as well, and concrete deteriorates over time. The aggregate starts to become exposed, and so this fund was set up to help address deteriorating concrete. And this intersection is one of our older concrete pads within the city, and it needs some maintenance. It needs to be sealed. And so this project may have been a little bit of a catalyst to prioritize this intersection, but it needs to be sealed. to keep the longevity of that concrete going.
Yeah, my biggest regret when I was reading this on the budget, or on the packet, was that there were no visuals, no ideas of what we might expect. I'll forward an email to the rest of the council. I think I forwarded to Tori of some art that was on the streets in Boulder, and I forwarded to you guys as well, which is really exciting. And for the ideas, I'm wondering if it's possible to tie in the Ute tribe into being represented by some of this art. I'm in favor. Those were my concerns, and thank you for this.
I had one small question, and that, what about water quality when this starts breaking down and going into our storm water?
We've, again, speaking with Fort Collins and Boulder, we talked to them about the types of paints they used. They were using an exterior latex paint or an oil-based exterior paint, and they both brands that we're looking at are low toxicity and lead-free, which we've looked at with April, our Clean River manager, and she feels that those are appropriate paint types. As far as the mural deteriorating over time, we don't feel like it's any more impactful to the river than other activities that happen in town. We will require the project to dispose of all materials in, not down the storm drains and in an appropriate manner,
Of course,
as well as all the water that we'll use to paint the mural.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad you checked with April. That's like number one. It would seem that maybe when it gets to a point, and I'm just making an assumption that at a certain point when they deteriorate, they start to chip, or maybe we can make sure the sweet sweeper goes by there a little bit more and doesn't let it get into the storm drains. Okay, thank you.
First, super excited about this. I was very happy to see it, and I'm really excited to see what comes up. I'm sure you guys in your research have seen like the 3D ones, so maybe we do like a canyon just in case Will wants to do a canyon jump on the bike. So no, I'm super excited about this and the partnership. My only question is, in my time in working at the Institute, we had sponsors like Shell or Halliburton, and I just want to make sure that this is just art and not sponsorship.
This is just art and not sponsorship, yes. And we've talked about theme of this. We met with the artist. He came on board with the team about 3 weeks ago, and he's really excited. He's local to the Valley and has done pavement artwork before down in Carbondale during COVID. He did a mural for them, and we really trust his artistic ability to capture a component of Aspen's community.
Just a thought, because I think this will be very well received and fun, but it's a different medium for most, certainly the technical aspects of it. So through Sarah or the Red Brick, just to get an invite out to local artists who want to come watch it be done and learn the process, so that in the future we may have some local artists who want to do stuff.
Absolutely.
Just one more assurance that concrete pads throughout the city will also be addressed, that not all $45,000 of that line item is going to go to that intersection?
We've reached out to concrete sealant consultants and contractors, and so we're waiting on a bid, but I do not anticipate the full $45,000 going to this.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last part.
I don't anticipate the full $45,000 going towards this project.
Okay.
We're waiting on bids.
What was the timeline? When was it going to be?
By Ideas Fest.
So the intention, the plan is to install this the weekend before Ideas Fest starts. So that's mid-June.
And will that be conflicting with Food and Wine? in
It's the
June?
weekend after.
After?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Does the installation require shutting down the street?
It will, yes. So we anticipate a day for prepping the concrete. It'll be street sweeping, hopefully power washing, and then a day or two for layout and painting. And the intention of this whole project is that it's a community event, and we would love to see as many community members show up. The artist has agreed to lay out the mural as a paint by numbers, so he'll have everything marked out, and the community can come and help paint this. There will be educational components. Sarah Roy will be there and collecting engagement and education around her community art plan. And so we're really excited to host this, but it will require a street shutdown.
You know, I don't know about that because most people in this community like to paint outside the lines.
Good point. I want to
Our
invite to my
artist
Gmail,
promised.
I'm coming.
He'll be flexible
This
on
is a
that.
bus route?
It
So
is
there'll
for
be
the Hunter Creek.
rerouted buses,
Correct.
information that goes out about
Yes.
that?
We
letting
will
people
do
know.
outreach to bus route riders, outreach to businesses in the surrounding area. A lot of that will follow if it were a construction site, the same requirements will need to be followed. So 300-foot radius, we'll have traffic control.
Okay.
Yeah.
This might be your opportunity for tennis in the streets with the mayor,
Well, if you
right in
could,
front of your house.
you could, well, there's already been some painting out there, but yeah, if you could paint bowling lanes,
Bless
that'd
you.
be the best. Bless you.
I'm okay.
You know, number one, it's interesting that we don't know anything that is proposed for this, which leaves the door open to anything. Now, we've got some guidelines and guardrails set up, so we can think that, yeah, everything's gonna go great with this. There's only a few ways that this could go bad. Let's make sure it doesn't, number one. Because this is extremely exciting. This is something that this council has been talking about for 4 years. So it's a great opportunity. I think it's really neat. Your partnership with the Institute is wonderful. Like I said, I see some criteria and considerations that, you know, kind of lend itself to success here. So I've got nothing but great hopes. I do appreciate you asking so many questions and making sure that this is executed appropriately because, like I said, public art is a touchy subject. And when it goes bad, it goes really bad. When it goes good, it goes great.
Yeah.
Did you have another comment, Rachel?
And I was just going to say, public art is great, and if it is not enjoyed by everyone, it probably is good art.
I was gonna say,
You know,
that's the definition.
that's the thing, you know, just think of that killer Mustang they have out of DIA and how many people got upset by the eyes and wanted it removed, and it's like, I think it looks cool, you know? But art is not supposed to be so boring that you don't notice it.
Yeah.
And it should get a good reaction. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Satisfied? Questions? Yes. Okay. Then the next item that I want to pull, and I'd like to pull this because I'd like to vote on it as well, is resolution number 47. This is the Burlingame Early Childhood Education Center contract, the change order. And I have been non-supportive of this moving forward at this time. I think that we still should have our study done and that we should, not just the study of a needs assessment, but also a staffing assessment. I also think that this location is a challenge for what we are trying to program there. So I don't know if any of you have any other further questions. It's pretty obvious. This is for design work to get it kind of funding ready, basically. So
Well, just a sort of point of order of respect, I've also not been supportive of this because I want to see the needs assessment first. There's only 4 of us here, but I'm pretty sure 3 of us support this, so should it just be pushed in respect for majority?
Well, it would be a whole, you won't be here next time, but we could do it on the 11th.
Right, but, well, yeah, I
Yeah.
may or may not be, but if John's here, then the vote will reflect the actual will of the council.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was under the impression that when we got to the last meeting and discussion of this, we wanted to go ahead and complete the design work so that it would be potentially, quote, shovel-ready should we be able to obtain the funding or the federal funding or grant funding coming through, but that we weren't going to stop in the midway of the design work. And then whether it's another council in 2 years or 6 years that picks it back up again, having to start all over again from scratch. And so, you know, we've expended a pretty significant amount of money to get it to this point, and I thought we were just trying to get it over the finish line so that it's ready. You know, should the funding, you know, I mean, there's still discussion about the county or larger regional childcare district being formed and all sorts of different opportunities. I think we are still experiencing some significant wait list type issues, even though we don't have all of that right now. You know, we've been fortunate to finally get the red brick, the yellow brick back up and running fully. And you're right about the staffing issues, but the staffing and childcare go around in circles, because when people don't have childcare, they can't staff other businesses and things like that. So I've agreed and continue to support just getting it to the place where we can have it in a safe hold, and the work that we have in this phase is done without going forward with anything else from here. So I would support this going forward, but I respect you and not wanting to vote for it, but I don't know that we want to bring it to a vote to have a 2-2 die at the table. And if it's more appropriate to, let me ask Jen, if we delay approving this contract for 2 weeks, is that going to be a challenge?
It'll just delay moving forward with this. You know, we were trying to
Wrap it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the contract component.
Okay. If, just reading where this seems to be going, I can make a motion to move it to the meeting of April 11th.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay. I would make a motion to move consent item number Resolution 47, Series of 2023, the Burlingame Early Childhood Education Center Contract Change Order 2 to our meeting of April 11th.
I'll second that in respect for council desire.
A motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on that? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Mesereau,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
I'm a yes. Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have one small item I wanted to mention, more for the public. This board knows well about it. But can I ask someone from our Open Space and Trails Committee to come up for a half second to talk about this Cobb's property? What are we getting, a cob of corn out there somewhere?
Bushels and bushels.
What are we doing
Should
to
have an
help
opening
out?
party. I'd like mine Mexican street corn style, please.
Thanks, Rachel.
welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Kuhn. I'm joined here with
Austin Moise, Director of Parks and Rec, and I want to introduce Brian Hightower from the Aspen Valley Land Trust.
Hi, Brian, how are you
Brian.
doing?
Good, thanks.
Good.
So we were approached by Aspen Valley Land Trust to participate in a supporting role of an acquisition of a property immediately adjacent to the Marble Base Camp. It is currently owned by the Colorado Outward Bound School, and it is on the market. And because of its immediate adjacency to the existing AVLT-owned Marble Base Camp, where all of our students in the Aspen School District in 8th grade visit as part of a rite of passage out of middle school into high school, we reached out and connected with our board at our last Open Space and Trails meeting, and they recommended a support of this acquisition. AVLT is in the process of the acquisition. It's not final, but we are committing funds if they are successful in the acquisition through a bid with the Colorado Outward Bound School. So we're happy to be partners. There's a multi-stakeholder group that they are compiling. I can't really speak to that group.
That's okay.
But I definitely want to let everyone know that we're excited about this, and we think it's really important to preserve this property for all of the residents and for all the kids in the Aspen School District and all of the folks in the valley.
And I'll just add that it really does not only preserve those opportunities, but the idea, and we can let Brian speak to it as well, is to really expand those opportunities for kids throughout the valley, and specifically with outdoor education in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was just going to say, we're happy to participate and appreciate you bringing it forward, and it's a great regional cooperative effort.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, we did discuss this in executive session. Since it's before us, I think we can at least comment to, since John isn't here, He was passionate supporter of this, as am I. 3 generations of 8th graders have experienced this, and the 24-hour solo is a rite of passage, as is that whole 8th grade outdoor ed. I escorted a group over, and two different years I was involved in that, and I'm an enthusiastic supporter of this as well, and appreciate you bringing it forward, and hope this goes through for us.
Thanks.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes?
Counselor Mesereau,
See.
Counselor Richards,
Yes,
Mayor Tory.
I mean, yes.
thank you.
On the heels of that, I just want to acknowledge our newest board and commission members. We have Charlie Olson, who is joining the Next Gen Advisory Commission, and Rodney Hill will be joining the Local Licensing Authority. We do have more board availability, so please go online to cityofaspen.com and fill out your application, and we will put you on a board so fast, it'll make your head spin.
Got any requests? I'm gonna have some time on my hands.
Yes, I do. All right, that brings us down to our last item, which is actually an action item, and talk about a fresh item.
Hi, Debbie, thank you for being here.
I'm good purse. Is that a purse? A briefcase? What do we call that? I like it.
This item, this action item is just a discussion regarding Senate Bill 23-213, which, as you know, is this housing package that's coming through. And it came through recently. I think it's only been really released about a week. Maybe it's been talked about for about 3 weeks or something like that. So luckily, Sarah and Jen are on the case, and we're going to hear a little bit more about it right now. The purpose of this discussion is just to make sure that council members are on the same page. You know, there's a lot going on minute by minute. I think Sarah might have just been on the phone, you know, in regards to this matter. So we're just trying to get to make sure that we're moving forward with council as a united body.
So while Jen is getting ready, we're just going to provide a brief overview of the bill. A lot of you have received contacts from different sources, so we wanted to provide some clarity of what is in the bill today. I was stepping out, that was the governor's office calling, discussing amendments. They're going to roundtable tonight on the bill, and so I wanted to be sure to slip in there some of the conversations that have been happening in CAS communities for consideration as they move forward. But Jen's going to provide an overview of the bill at a high level, and then who it is impacting. And then we will get into a little bit about where we think CAS's position is going on this bill and update you about where we think the receptiveness is or isn't about that bill.
Can I ask, are we only interested in the CAS position, or are we interested in the Colorado Municipal League position as well?
In my comments, I'll discuss my conversation today with Kevin Baumer with you as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to give a little more color to this, Sarah was asked and agreed to really do some of the lifting on this. So she's actually been coordinating some of the meetings that have been going on. As you see, the 15 communities that are listed there. So anyway, that's part of the reason that maybe there's a little bit more weight to the discussion that we're having here, as opposed to just kind of like brushing over this, is that Aspen is taking somewhat of a leadership collaborative position, so.
Yeah, just to clarify that too, so in January, there was a CAST meeting. I couldn't be there. I got volunteered to represent CAST managers at that meeting on this piece of legislation as it went forward, and I agreed to do it.
Yes, we did ask. We did not tell. We did ask.
So Jen, if you want to go ahead and, do you want us to wait for her to return?
No, she knows what's going on.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jen Newton, Senior Project Manager in the City Manager's Office. Ben Anderson is also here tonight to answer any questions that you might have. I just wanted to quickly go over the impacted communities that are represented in Senate Bill 213. There are tiers of the regulations that would impact different communities across the state differently. Urban municipalities, tier 1 and 2, primarily those are Front Range communities. It does include Grand Junction. The non-urban municipalities, which are a population of greater than 5,000 people that are represented there, and then the rural resort job centers. The 15 communities, including Aspen, but those 15 CAS communities that are up there on the slide. And as Sarah mentioned, we have been having conversations with the CAS members, and Sarah will go over that a little bit more in detail about kind of the position that we anticipate that CAST will adopt tomorrow. The largest concerns, and actually, I'll just go over this quickly. There are policy areas that are addressed in the bill that are beyond just upzoning, but certainly that's one of the elements that's in the bill. It would require rulemaking from the Department of Local Affairs, housing needs assessments and plans, accessory dwelling units as a use by right, middle housing for some of the impacted communities, including Aspen, which middle housing would be defined as multifamily with between 2 and 6 units. Key corridors, so that's within a quarter mile of the BRT routes, and would identify how and where we would have to, through this housing need assessment, identify where housing would meet the need related to the housing. Minimum zoning and projects would be approved administratively. There's also some other elements of the bill that are not specific to upzoning. Sale of property for affordable housing would allow municipalities to sell and dispose of property for affordable housing without a vote. Removal of family status occupation restrictions. Treating manufactured housing as the same as site-built units. Some tie-in to strategic growth objectives related to the transportation funding. So prioritization of regionally significant transportation in the next 10-year plan cycle. And then some reporting for water loss. And it does allow for, to ask for an exemption for the requirements if the water, sewer, and stormwater in a municipality isn't sufficient. One concern is whether or not all municipalities provide those utilities. And so it doesn't appear that there is a mechanism within the bill for a community where, for example, the water utility isn't the city providing that service, for that to be considered. And with that, I will pass it over to Sarah. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about specific areas of the bill. We've spent a lot of time looking at it. We do think that it would be fairly easy for Aspen to implement the requirements. Would require that housing needs assessment and every 5 years, and then to report out about how Aspen is meeting those needs. But a lot of what is in the bill is something that we already do. And I have printouts of the.
Hold on, I think we have clarifying questions first.
Yeah, my question is just, when this first came out, it seemed like the primary fear or criticism is that the bill either proscribed or permitted densities or heights that were greater than what the community would normally bear in its character. And so I'm just curious, can you kind of like walk me through what the initial was and then how that's been altered and how that meets our, kind of communal standard for those things?
Ben, why don't you come up to the table too? The short story is the upzoning's 6 units by right, so that's beyond what you've already approved. That is one of the impacts to the mountain towns. I think that there's some other pieces of this, how it's defined, still doesn't address affordability. The bill doesn't address affordability in mountain communities. It's based on the premise that increased supply equals affordability, and it's just not the case for these 15 communities singled out.
And I think like a lot of us, I've I've been sort of getting up to speed quickly, but I do think that a lot of the detail related to zoning, related to density, to height, to intensity, the things that I think we have, lots of conversations in this community about, will ultimately be kind of prescribed by DOLA, in future plans, that we would either be able to adopt DOLA's kind of specifications or sort of adopt something that met their kind of minimum requirements that was sort of Aspen generated. And so a lot of those things, I do agree with Sarah's perspective on the middle housing. We've approved up to 4 units, across our residential neighborhoods. This would go up to 6. But some of those other sort of details about zoning, height, density, intensity, would ultimately be determined in the future by DOLA action.
But just to be clear, our upzoning to 4 across the community is based on a prerequisite of it being deed restricted housing.
That's correct.
And so this 6 does not require that, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
It says it may be deed restricted. We have, and we get into the proposed amendments at CAST, we suggest the word shall.
Yeah.
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 Because there's some very affordable 1- and 2-bedroom condos around here without deed restrictions.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't include in this slide is that it doesn't require counties to participate, and I think that that's an area also where, in terms of developing those plans, that was identified as an area of potential concern.
I have a lot of feelings on this, but to try to just stick to the topics here, is there any information about whether the ADUs must be occupied? Or you could just build the ADU and hope it's occupied?
Media room.
Yeah, no, they don't have that. They
They're
don't.
not-
The only thing is that there is the local jurisdiction can determine the anti-displacement rules. That is the extent of the language in the bills. So it allows, in essence, again, the deed restriction control may be put in, but not required. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the ADU portion. And I've been really honest with the drafters that the way it's currently drafted repeats Aspen's early mistakes in these other communities. And we don't want to take these other communities down that route. And we have much better programs like what's in Crested Butte today for ADUs that should be looked as models rather than what we see in the code, in the bill as introduced.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is that the session ends beginning of May. It's barely a month away, 40 days, something like that. And to throw this out now, and has there been any discussion with regional councils of governments in advance? No. Has there been any conversations with sand districts or water providers in advance? But down on the Front Range, you usually have to have a letter to say, we have an ability to serve this growth that you're producing. So I think it's going to mean the last of our conditional water rights on the Roaring Fork watershed will be developed and taken eastward because they have water rights that are senior for another 20% out of the frying pan and the Roaring Fork. And this is the type of growth. This effectively ends growth control or growth management of any sort in Colorado. And so we can focus on our own region and what it does to us this year in this bill. But once we've turned local control of planning and zoning over to the state of Colorado for us, we don't know what next year's bill is going to be, or the bill after that, or the bill after that, because suddenly now the state will be doing your local zoning. When these things are down there as will be approved administratively, there is no planning and zoning meeting, there is no city council hearing. So if people don't like the design of the new buildings that will go up at the Airport Business Center as a transit hub, or in Elgibel, or maybe even Brush Creek Village, Brush Creek, because when it says sale of property for affordable housing, that was the single greatest fear of people purchasing open space in our community, was that eventually there would be a vote to turn it over to affordable housing. Now you don't even need a vote, even though both our charter and the county's charter says that there must be like-kind replacement of any housing, of any open space land that is used. And it sounds like this state law would overturn local voters' preference about ways to protect their open space. So I don't know if this means we should have a new village out at Brush Creek Park and Ride lot, but we certainly have put a lot of open space together out there for housing. And if I was part of a Down Valley regional government developing a regional plan, I'd say, why don't you put it right up there, guys? Why don't you put it up where your workers need to be instead of down in our communities? So when will the next bill tell us what the regional plan should be? Because they didn't like the regional plan we submitted. You know, this is just going somewhere the state has never gone before. And I know I'm getting a little excited about our Western heritage and independence and things like that. But there's a lot of problems with this. It's been done in a highly rushed and disrespectful way. You know, projects approved administratively without even knowing, will side yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks that are in our code be respected by the DOLA code? No. And, you know, who's talking to the existing property owners? You know, you might have bought a home, and most subdivisions are laid out in a certain way, so everybody has a certain view and everything like that. And now your next door neighbor can build their ADU closer to your house than their house and overlooking your bedroom window, you know? And what about tenant rights? Is there anything in the bill about what do ADU occupants get? Can they have sleepovers, friends? Can they have friends visit at all? Do they get to use the yard? Do they have to do housework? You know, do they get month-to-month leases or year-long leases? So my concern is this is just a lot of wishful thinking. It's a Hail Mary pass. We hope the free market will solve the Colorado housing problem for us. And I don't think that's going to be what you get. Housing prices rise to the market. You could build a nice ADU somewhere on the South Platte, somewhere in Denver, somewhere in Boulder, and just rent it to someone to California for 3 months. They don't have to work in Colorado. They don't have to, they theoretically can't STR it. But what this means is all sorts of local governments are now going to have a new enforcement division. And they're going to need to be searching around to see, is anybody STRing their units? And are you occupying the units? Or suddenly they're going to be settling landlord-tenant disputes in a much bigger way than they are now. Who do you call when plumbing isn't working? Who do you call, you know, and we have any number of neighborhoods have been developed with very narrow streets, and people's cars are parked on their lot. And this says you don't have to park on the lot, you can have on-street parking. And so how do you snowplow around all these cars? It's just, I'm just saying, Tori, I cannot support this bill in any way, shape, or form. And I'm with the CML, and that might be different from this board, and it might be different from seeking amendments. But I learned a long time from Linda Powers, who was our senator from Crested Butte, that you don't try to fix bad bills, because you can get your amendment in there, you get your amendment in there, and when it gets to the final vote, those amendments are struck, or new amendments are added on, or even more importantly.
Okay.
Okay, I know, I'm sorry, and counties aren't included.
I want to, so, I think most of us agree, if not all, agree that there are problems in this, without a doubt. And, it's not one or two, it's several. But what we're talking about right now is our strategy. And you did just say, you know, something that is the division here. There's two camps right now, and Sarah, jump in whenever you want to, but there's two camps right now that one camp is kind of what you're speaking to, which is to somehow work so this does not get out of committee, work so this does not see a vote, make this not happen. Because if it goes to a vote, chances are, well, right now, we're reading the room and thinking that there's some push behind it.
I think the votes are there to pass it.
We do. So
I think you'll see communities suing afterwards.
but we don't want to necessarily get there. Anyway, my point is like we've been talking about a strategy for this. Now, Rachel touches on one strategy, which is to fight this, to see it not see a vote. we're not sure that we can accomplish that. So the conversations that we've been having have been about, number one, delaying this and stop fast tracking it for this session. That's one thing that we are starting off with immediately.
I would agree with that.
But then from there, we are still in that discussion process, and I say we, meaning the 15 communities that you just saw listed there, under the aegis of CAST meeting. And again, you know, Sarah was one of the leaders of the meeting today, which was the mayors of these communities, and we are trying to figure out that strategy which serves us the best. So again, this meeting for us is, we don't need to go through each item on this because it's 109 pages, and we know that 75 of them need edit. So that's not what we need to do right now. We just need to be talking about how, you know, how do we want to move forward? And making sure that we're, you know, on somewhat of the same page about that. So with that, I want then for Sarah to kind of get into a little bit of what the information we need from you guys is.
So what's being handed out to you is a draft position statement of CAST that will be considered by the CAST Board of Directors tomorrow. And likely, I anticipate, based upon the meetings I've had with the 15 managers of these rural resorts yesterday and with the mayors today, that comprises over half of the CAST board. And I believe that we'll see this move forward. So the key part of this is that all 15 communities, and I believe this is true for Aspen too, is we want to see affordable housing in this state addressed. Fundamentally, we think that is an issue that's affecting longtime families, and it's affecting local economies, and it's affecting community characters. And that those are combined issues that housing has the opportunity to solve. But there's agreement amongst the 15 communities that the current approach in the bill is insufficient to actually accomplishing the governor's objectives. And it goes back to that increased supply does not equal affordability in our mountain towns as a basic premise. Now, the notion that reducing barriers to density is good for Colorado, I'm not necessarily opposed to that as an individual professional. There's places where that's a very effective tool, but it's places that don't have these extreme real estate markets that we're experiencing in the high country, from my perspective. So what this will do, if this passes tomorrow with the CAST board, is that this would be submitted to the state representatives and senators for all 15 rural resort communities that are identified as job centers. And really, instead of starting the position of no, right, there's this whole continuum of how you can look at legislation from an oppose to oppose unless amended, to neutral, to support with amendment, to full support, right? There's kind of 5 stations along that continuum. And CML right now is at the oppose completely. And I spoke again today with Kevin Baumer, and he and I have been talking back and forth for weeks about this. And he feels like this is the direction he was given on this specific bill by his board of directors. Because when you look across the entire membership of CML, the cumulative impacts really were concerning to them about Front Range. And that board was unwilling to support an amendment process as an approach to put this bill into negotiations. However, on the other end, in the conversations that folks like myself, Mayor Eric Mumala and Breckenridge are having, we're hearing the governor's expecting a negotiation on this bill, and that the primary sponsors are expecting a negotiation. So to start from a place of no negotiation, I think would not be in the best interest of our high country communities. I can't speak for the Front Range, but my conversations with the high country communities, maybe in the end we will still oppose but that there is room for a next 7 to 14 days to discuss amendment. And the conversation I just stepped out to have, yes, was supportive of, I like that idea, let me take it back to the group. And so I think that there is an opportunity here that we get through the next 2 weeks, and if it's not going in the amendment process friendly, that maybe the position would need to harden amongst cast. But Aspen needs to speak with its own voice, not just with the cast voice in this decision-making, and why I need direction from you on this bill and how you would want to do the approach to it. This particular handout I just gave you proposes 5 amendments that the 15 cast communities have coalesced around since the bill's release last week. And these are the 15 communities that are identified as rural resort job centers. There's 2 other cast communities that get caught in this bill but don't fit that definition. That's Gunnison and Carbondale. And I talked to Carbondale's town manager, and Crested Butte is following up with Gunnison's. Because Gunnison right now does not have a manager. They're in an interim phase. And the first request is slow this down. We're actually supposed to provide feedback and amendments by Thursday of this week. That is classic. We don't really want to hear from you, but we're going to provide a way for you to provide us input still. Tactic, at least my experience in dealing with legislatures now in 4 different states. That's a common tactic. So I think it's important that, and the mayor was on this call today, that we have some specific individuals that need outreach right away to help the slowdown of this in the committee. It shouldn't be going to committee next week. It has not been absorbed enough, and we're very fearful that's going to happen next Tuesday. And I use the word fearful because it doesn't actually allow for good dialogue if it happens that quick, if it's one day and then it votes out of committee, right? So we need it to slow down. The second portion is that there's this confusion happening. So the state has this very specific funding it has created for affordable housing in the state as part of being able to take some of the federal one-time dollars came down to support some services to essentially create a middle housing, what do they call it? The Middle Housing Authority for the state of Colorado. Which is a housing authority for the entire state focused on this middle housing category. For us, we include middle housing in our up to 240% AMI program already. So there's these other programs the state has created. They've created a grant program for regional housing studies that are out there and under consideration that have all been actually put on pause for the most part right now. So we're getting this bill that cites a lot of literature that doesn't do actual data analysis in Colorado. The first 14 pages of the bill list all kinds of resources you could go read about why upzoning matters, things like that, but doesn't actually demonstrate the needs. So the nexus component of the bill is still weak, in my opinion. And many CAS folks feel that it is weak in its position by not having this statewide housing needs assessment complete. So we're suggesting that be a priority directive to DOLA. Get that done before any of this legislation becomes effective. That way, too, we can identify what are the regions for the rural resort job centers. They say we have to work regionally. It's really unclear what the region is. Is that Picken County? Is that Garfield County? Right? And what does that look like in terms of their expectations of planning? The third point in this draft position statement for an amendment is forcing ADUs and middle housing as a use by right in any currently zoned single-family home zone district. For Aspen, this isn't really a big issue for us. We're already up to 4. We would probably debate whether 6 actually meets our minimum affordable housing size units, unit size requirements and amenity requirements. But if the lot's big enough, the bill would be 6 instead of 4. Not hugely impactful to us because there's really only pockets for this to happen within our 4 square miles. For a lot of the other CAS communities, though, not being able to be at the table about where upzoning makes sense and how is it administered afterwards is very concerning to them. So that is why this one is on the list. I actually think that one, I'll get into with you in a minute about a strategy that we're focusing on to try to address that. We also want the bill sponsors and the governor to know that we support ADUs superseding private covenants and restrictions. So basically overriding HOA limitations that yes, don't allow that level of limitation, but let's get ADUs in the right place for the right reasons in the right way. So here's an example. We had to explain that the zero setback on ADUs was actually a public safety hazard because of snow loading in the high country.
And fire.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things we could point out, but we're just saying, like, you know, hey, in practicality, this actually doesn't work. And so there is a lot of receptive of understanding this ADU component of the bill needs a lot of work to be successful. And then in talking with folks from the governor's office and with CAST, we're recommending that there be the bill calls for a technical advisory committee. Right now it says advisory committee. We know it's going to be turned into a technical advisory committee based on conversations with the drafters. And we're suggesting that that there be a task force specifically for these rural resort communities so that we're not tied into all the things that are happening with these urban centers in this bill. And that group of the 15 rural resorts come back with something that the state and the governor's office can be proud of, that really offers the flexibility needed by saying, hey, maybe there's these 30 different strategies to affordability, and you have to, local rural resort community, you have to implement X percentage of them by Y date, right? But it doesn't dictate which strategies are specifically needed in each rural resort. It allows the rural resort to have some control over, is it buy down a free market, or is it new construction? Or is it dealing with expiring deed restrictions? Is it having a strategic plan? Is it having a local tax to support your program? So first start out with what are the next number of those different strategies you must implement, but also turn it into an incentive. So you got to do a minimum of X, but if you go further than X, it becomes more competitive and funding opportunities with the state's funds. So, right, it's an inducement activity for local communities to implement more aggressive affordable housing strategies. There's a lot more I could go into. Again, I think this is a strategy that gets tried out for a very short time period. And then it is, if there is no receptive nature of these changes, then it's time to move on that continuum, probably to a harder position in my view. What I need today is two things. First is whether there is support in following this CAST approach for now over the next 14 days or so. And then secondly, I really would like the council to identify amongst its members who will be the elected voice on this issue for the city of Aspen. I feel like, you know, my role as a staff member is not as effective in these conversations as an elected voice would be as these discussions go forward. So I will stop there, and questions for clarifying before we go back to council's debate.
Start with some questions. Any questions about this?
Well, there's a question I have about that manufactured housing is treated the same as on site built. Does that mean that somebody could roll in 6 tiny homes? Because they specifically mentioned tiny homes. I don't want to get into minutia of the bill. I do want to say from a high level that I object to, I've been characterizing this as new federalism. I see the state mandating, and it doesn't say may approve, it says must approve administratively. And it's state control of the local governments and local municipalities that from a high level that I really find objectionable. And what is, like Rachel said, what's going to morph into our community that is in the urban 40 units per acre, and if you're using mixed income, it can be 60 units per acre. I think the lumberyard's 27 per acre. That's huge density. And that's for urban areas, but my concern is that the next thing is going to be for the rural, what do we call, rural, remote, or our category of rural resort job center municipalities, that what's going to be mandated to us next. So in answer to your question, Sarah, yes, I think it should be slowed down. I think we've seen for the last number of city council meetings where non-negotiation from a party winds up going nowhere. So I support negotiating. I support some of these amendments. I have Rachel's concerns about if you have amendments, they can be removed at the last moment. So I'd like to move forward, and this is really accelerated. I thought the time restriction was 3 days for comments, but it's this Thursday, the day after tomorrow, is the last day for comments. So it is really fast-tracked. And I agree with most of what this is saying, that other communities need to be doing what Aspen has been doing for 50 years and trying to think about your workforce. And so I agree with this, and I can't read and listen to you at the same time, so I'll digest what you handed me later and give any further comments. But I sat in on the cast, was it cast a couple of, yesterday I think it was, before your, I share a lot of the concerns. ADUs, we've tried that here decades ago, and what good does it do to have an ADU if you don't have a rental requirement? And so I don't want to get into all of the trees and all the twigs on it, but there are concerns with ADUs that I have. Right, 6 units by right with no deed restrictions. It's 105 pages or whatever. This is one of those things I wasted a branch on and printed it out at home so I could go over it. But this is really important bill, and I think it's being just ramrodded, and I really object to state mandating down to local municipalities, the new federalism. And your second question, if Tory wants to be our spokesman, I would support Tory, and it's just the two of us right now that weigh in on this, but we'll have a new council. But I think that you would be the appropriate person to be the spokesman.
I appreciate it. I'm somewhat involved in this already, and I would like to continue. Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Well, a couple of things. I want to mention I had gotten an email, a follow-up email from an earlier email from a reporter, Jason Blevins, I think with the Snowmass, the Colorado Sun. And I did write him my thoughts about that shortly yesterday afternoon before I came to the meeting. So if that ends up being counter to this council's position at the end of the day, you can just disown me. It's okay.
We'll give you one more meeting. Yeah. We'll take it under a meeting, and we're going to deal with you, Rachel.
No, I mean,
One demerit.
the principle of what does this portend for the future is really incredibly scary to me. They haven't done any goal setting to say, what will this potentially get us in 15 years? How will it happen? Will it be lower income, middle income? They just haven't done projections. It's a wing and a prayer. Particularly concerning to me is how this is going to drive county annexations. Suddenly, if you're in an urban area, you can increase your density tremendously. You can become a transit hub on Highway 82, the things we've always tried to stop, so that we'd have the open space, so we'd have the view planes. You could have an existing subdivision who wants to annex in just because they could add more little ADUs that they can rent long-term to people that don't work here and want a vacation for a week or wherever else in the state. So I just see this as driving so much new growth throughout the state that it's going to create job demand. It's not going to satisfy worker demand. That's my biggest fear. And the way it's set up, that's what it's likely to do. It's the law of unintended consequences. But you can't just say that every single family home in all of the South Platte is now going to have an ADU and we're going to supply the water for it, you know? And that's kind of what's saying. I mean, we've been trying to focus on the concept of how do you create housing and house your workforce in your community in a non-development model, in a model that's not like that. And this is the exact opposite of that. This is saying as much growth as we can encourage as quickly as possible is the only way to solve this problem without deed restrictions, without work requirements. And I just think that's not going to do it for us or the Front Range. And, you know, it's been said before, I think there's accuracy that what's happening here, other communities catch up with over time. Housing prices in the Front Range are pretty high now. If you were trying to get a studio or one bedroom or something near the Denver area, you're going to be in the thousands of dollars already. You know, ADUs are temporary. They're not ownership. So it's a transient workforce. ADUs do not support family foundation or family formation. So again, there's no definition on ADUs of minimum size. Can they be 800 square feet if it's going to be 2 people occupancy, or is it 1 person occupancy if it's under 450 square feet? There's nothing there about what amenities and what tenant rights. A lot of these are going to be built for servant quarters. So you have a housekeeper who comes in and that's the trade. You can do your housework a couple times a week or cook dinner a few times a week. It's not going to create housing. So those are the things. If you're asking my approach, I think they're not going to delay it because they're not going to want to pass it in 2024 in an election year when half of the House of Representatives are all coming up for votes. And they're just done this. We just went through a painful moratorium to be able to really look at the pros and cons and the outcomes and what we wanted and what other communities were doing and our goals. That sort of process hasn't happened with this. You know, this has been very rushed. It's been kept under cover until, boom, it was put out there, and a desire to have it passed within 30 days with very little stuff. So, you know, I would fight it. I would say, you know, if this board goes with oppose unless amended, I'd understand that. I understand taking the other 12 days to see what happens. But when you have this many amendments between ours and what the Front Range wants, this is like a strike below and create a whole new bill. This isn't something you can amend each section in a 109-page bill to make it all sync up right and be perfect. It's almost like it should be struck below and there should be a new bill. And the other thing, it's really experience, but we should know this is what's going to happen. It will be modified next year in next year's session, and it'll be modified the year after that. When we first were able to get taxes for RAFTA passed at the state legislation, they dropped property tax. They said, no, you can't. You talked to Dan Blankenship. We had to go back 3 different sessions to get the Rural Transportation Authority legislation in a place where we could really use it and use it effectively. And the ability to charge property tax was only added later. So whatever passes this year doesn't mean they're not going to come back and add a lot more burdens to it, because now we've established that the state has authority over local zoning and planning and things like that. And what's going to be the next one with the county? Maybe this doesn't solve the housing problem. Maybe we make the automatic subdivision in the state, which currently is 35 acres. Let's make it once every 5 acres. You take all those 35-acre lots, you could have 7 more houses on each one of them. Think about how much more housing we'd have. And that will be the next thrust. That will be the next thrust. And so I just, on the entire principle that this is not going to get the results that we want, that it's going to drive annexations into communities, it's going to create a lot of speculation on land values and things like that. So, and it's going to take more West Slope water in a big way. So I just really can't go there. And I know the desire to negotiate, and maybe that's the right approach, but I'm sorry, I'm gonna try and finish up, but what happens is if you negotiate away your 12 days and then it's a done deal and they still go forward, but you don't have time to really gather your opposition and the people who we should be talking to, which is like the HOA associations of Colorado. Do all of our citizens know what we'd be supporting if we say, we support this? We support the potential that every single family lot left in Aspen could be a sixplex. Not a fourplex, which almost got a recall and certainly created a lot of Board of Realtor interest in the election. But now we're gonna go to a sixplex and Aspen supports it. And Aspen supports an ADU on every single family lot, you know, with conditions. We want conditions, but I mean, you have to think about what you're telling the public you support. And I think that's why they won't do it in 2024 is because they don't want to run on re-election on it in 2024. And I think this actually could be really detrimental to the state.
I appreciate it. All I was going to chime in with was I appreciate your hardline take on this. And what I was going to say when we got this handed out, this was put together yesterday. This is very first,
I understand.
First blush. The conversations that we've been having are more along the lines of how you're speaking about this. The concerns on this, and you've echoed so many of them just here, are what we talk about in the meetings. The meetings, your sentiment is appreciated and understood at the meetings. We're trying to work with that to, what we are talking about in the meetings right now is not a whole bunch of concession.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not.
I can read that from the back. I'm just saying, there's so many things here. I really wish, I mean, I could see him doing a special session in August, and that might be a suggestion, is go ahead and give it another 90 days and do a special session and then pass it. But to try to pass this and correct it all in the next 30 days, with every other bill that they're considering, every other bill that they're still working on, including the long bill, the budget, it's not gonna turn out well. My impression.
You know what?
I do think that's part of the reason why the next 14 days are critical. If you're not aware, they have some major gun legislation going through right now. And this is intended to be picked up after that, but before budget. So there's this window, so to speak, before they have to move into the appropriations process. And I think it's a matter of, we'll know real quick whether our state legislatures are listening to their communities, quite frankly, if they continue to entertain this without a real dialogue with us.
Well, that's what I was saying. You know, you have to think about the next step, and I'd like to see the CAS community doing that, of saying, what is our drop-dead date to know that they're accepting these things, for us to see them in writing, that they're going to be in the bill. Again, oppose unless amended, but if they're not forthcoming with that, how much time are you going to have to get your other allies? I mean, I know Kevin Bonner's having a CML town hall meeting on the phone tomorrow, but he really should be calling everyone to be down at the Capitol next Friday, you know, or next Monday. They should all be walking the halls. Every single municipality in the community or property owner who is concerned about what's going to happen to their backyard. Darn right.
I think, Rachel, you'll hear some of that if you make it for tomorrow's call, based upon my discussions with Kevin. I don't want to get ahead of what his final decisions are of what he's going to encourage his membership to do. His agency's membership, rather.
Okay, some more input?
Love to. Probably the last time or only time I'll get to, so yeah, appreciate it. And I definitely support you as the representative. I wish I could do it, but I think you'll be really great and even-handed and well-rounded in that, and I think that's what the process deserves. So, yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of this strategy. I think I come to a lot of the same conclusions, have the same concerns, same red lines, maybe a different attitude about it. So certainly would like to see this postponed to do our homework to do this right. Maybe we get in and we find that they are implacable and no is the option. Maybe, you know, no for now, but yes to working together later if they're open to that and they know that the election's coming is a better opportunity with a blank slate. There are some really big red flags in here that, you know, I would not support anything moving forward under any circumstance without resolving for us. The first one is any and all upzoning, whether that's an ADU structure or a sixplex must come with a deed restriction and an occupancy requirement. That to me is like 100% required for anything else to move forwards. The water concerns that Rachel has, does the projected growth over the next 100+ years mean the straw is dry on our rights here? That's a problem that just simply needs to be solved ahead of time. There's another number of other concerns that you've clearly identified that I'm also very supportive of working on. That said, my attitude when I first read the CML brief, it was like Braveheart coming for the door. And I understand why, because the concerns are real. But my reaction was like, every one of our communities has been saying hair on fire, crisis of housing. Every one of us. And despite our best efforts or no efforts, and there's a spectrum, we haven't solved it, right? None of us have solved it. And we have a governor's office, for the first time I'm aware of, who says, we want to do something. We want to help. And, it felt a bit like we've been in a foxhole forever, and the first person, after we've been stuck there being shot at, raised their hand down, and we're like cutting off the hand because we don't like the jacket they're wearing. And so, I think a little appreciation is actually warranted. A little thank you for showing up and wanting to support our communities. And we know you're respectful of our communities. We know you spend a lot of time fundraising here, Mr. Governor, and you know how special it is. So these are the things that just will not work for us. And we are here to work with you, but we'll stand in front of the wall if we need to. But thank you for showing up for the first time. That's how I read it. So that's when I say different attitude, same opinion. We need that, whether it's the ADUs. We tried it. It didn't work. Can they help us with that and mandate that there's an occupancy requirement? Wow, that would be great. Thank you, Governor. Right? So I just would appreciate us taking that attitude in with this policy in mind.
We have.
Great.
We have.
I wasn't suggesting we hadn't. I only get to talk about this once.
We have, and Sarah's been in contact just minutes ago and such with the governor's office. It's not as open a dialogue. It hasn't been, I should say. It sounds like we're working that way because of that tact. I love when you use your metaphors and such, and I would just say back, when when you're in a foxhole and somebody is reaching out to you, they're not wearing a jacket, they're wearing a uniform. And it's either the same uniform you're wearing or it's not. So I totally agree with you. We have a lot of respect for the governor's office. We have approached this utilizing that respect and knowing, I say this to Sarah all the time, they hear us. They respect us as well. And I mean us on this board and Aspen and Sarah. And so they do hear us. Are they listening? That's the question. So we're there. I appreciate how you frame our position, and we are moving with respect to what you're saying. Two different ends of the spectrum, perhaps here, but we're cognizant of it, and we're trying to move in that direction.
One more point I just want to make is, I think we need to recognize that we are the odd duck in the state. Right, we're the outlier, we're the edge case, we're standard deviation. We're not the only one, but we're talking about 15 small communities, and I don't want to mirror what I might see as a mistake from them thinking the Front Range policy fits us, and I don't want to mirror that back and suggest that what we need also fits the Front Range. And so, it might be that the Front Range needs us to move tomorrow, and I wouldn't want to hold that back from them, but could there be a carve-out where our communities do take longer or something like that,
That is the strategy, is we're not, the high mountain communities, high country communities don't profess to be able to tell the Front Range what to do about their situations and their land use choices and their community values. But we are asking, respect our 30 to 50 years of history in this policy area that is somewhat new to you, state, and let us help you and give you something the state can be proud of for the high country.
That's great.
With the caveat of the water issue and climate issues and shared state issues. So
I mean, if there's anything that should be a shared issue, it is occupancy and work requirement. This is just not growth for new vacation rentals or, and longer-term rentals, not short-term. Long-term rentals don't even pay sales tax into the state or the local community. So that's pretty painful to say, let's double the number of bedrooms. I mean, excuse me, add a third. If everything's a 2-bedroom now, we're gonna add a third. If it's 3 bedrooms, we're gonna add a fourth by putting that ADU in. But without occupancy and rent, that's where we have entire agreement. And there is no tie to AMI too. I mean, even if you're requiring occupancy and that it be rented, it's not going to be tied to AMI at all. And so this is just going to be a little high-end job-generating exercise.
It's the case, right?
That's
one
what's
rule
happening.
Takes it from
But,
either.
when you want growth to pay its own way, it never does. People approve throughout the state a whole new subdivision to pay for the past tax dues and the past sewer system, and they approve something else because of what growth they'll get. And communities fight each other over who gets the sales tax at the new Target store. And so that's where this is just going to be a massive growth generator. That's why I'm concerned about what happens even outside of our district.
100%. Those requirements shift from solving a problem to greatly exacerbating the problem.
I want to toss in one more thing here. We've been working with Governor Polis for a couple of years about the construction defects, and this seems to be a revenue generator for all those people that are going to sue you because
The ADU wasn't built right.
your multifamily.
Well, the multifamilies, yeah, that's a good point.
So it is definitely on my issue list that we have this other problem. But that particular piece applies only if it's a for-sale product, not a rental. So they view that those two policies are a local control about intersection and the developer-builder choice about how they're going to move their product forward. Doesn't quite work that way with our housing authority regulations. So it's definitely something that we would look into, but I anticipate that most likely the by right zoning is likely to generate rental product, not ownership product. The bill is very specific that it's about workforce housing, not community housing. I just want to make sure we understand that.
But there's no requirement that you.
Yeah.
I know, but I just want to be clear, like, it is not intended necessarily as a path to ownership. None of that kind of language exists in the bill, as I see it.
It's targeting that.
So it would be helpful for me, just because we are in an action item in a regular meeting, Mr. Mayor, if you could please summarize the direction the council's giving me.
Yes, we are supportive of our participation in the discussions with CAST and others with supporting oppose
Unless amended.
unless amended. And moving forward, that may be pushed to a harder no. And we have also agreed that I will be our spokesperson on the issue.
Thank you.
All right.
You need that seconded and voted, or is that good enough?
Then.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine for me as long as you all are fine that the mayor will be signing letters and speaking to elected officials on the community's behalf.
Go forth and make it right.
I will not attend the CML town hall meeting then tomorrow, so that Sarah could attend on behalf of the city or something. I don't know who gets to vote if John's out of town and I'm out, but I obviously have, I don't want to mess up the soup you guys are stirring by making the wrong comments. But I'll step back, but, CML is going to have a very different flavor conversation than CAST is, and I don't know that I should
Spicier.
contribute to it because I'm more aligned with that. I think that even trying to begin to negotiate, it's like negotiating away half of your property rights for somebody else. The idea that the public's going to come in here and tell you how ugly something looks, and you say, well, we had to do it administratively. Go after the administrator, don't go after us. The state said we had to do it. It's just, that's not what a local citizen wants from their local government. you know, what colors? Oh, it's all gonna be purple and a shiny reflective roof, it'll be great. You know, and we would be able to say no, but administratively, can they? Will they have that criteria?
So it is one of the things that's in the CAS position about the ADUs and the by right components that they need to require local review for things such as architecture and placement on the site. That the bill currently does not, I don't know how to say what it says right now. It's kind of, it's less than that, for sure. Do either of you want to comment on that?
Does the state have a minimum livability for the size of these ADUs?
So the bill right now will have an amendment that specifies between 500 and 800 square feet for size requirements. We've heard that floated. It's not actually in the bill yet. I think the other thing too is we are trying to find the path that accomplishes the goal of increasing units for where people work.
Yeah.
Without damaging community character.
Yeah.
And right now, we're not at the right balance.
I mean, 800 square feet is a house. I mean, I'm sorry, I live in a 740 square foot, two bedroom, one bath. That's to put a house, I mean, that's a 3-person living arrangement. You got 2 bedrooms and a couch in the living room. You know, this is more than an accessory dwelling unit, if the sizes are being talked about like that.
I thought I read in there that this municipalities cannot set a minimum size for an ADU. Is that, did I remember
No,
incorrectly?
it's one of the pieces that are coming up for an amendment conversation that we've heard that there's support in clarifying what is an ADU. The other piece that I would just offer to you that we have to pay really close attention to is that this bill, as it currently written, removes all occupancy maximums.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we have a formula that says, hey, if you're in a 1-bedroom, it's not really meant for 4 people.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
doesn't
unrelated.
necessarily maintain that.
Yeah, so you can have 6 or 8 people in the 800 square foot ADU in your backyard. And then they can sue you and try to get you evicted. And the local municipality can deal with that for a couple years.
It's like lifty housing.
It does remind me of ski bum housing product. And I just think that we need to articulate why that doesn't work in the high country. If they're doing that because of the Front Range, okay. But there is some real legitimate reasons why in the high country, under deed restricted product, we manage occupancy levels, tenancy levels.
Thank you guys for all your work.
Yeah, thank you for your patience listening to us grouse about this as well.
I like that you get into everything non-complicated, Ben. Good
Jen,
job.
I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will move forward with ferocity and kindness. All right, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I was going to, but I missed it.
Oh, you can have it.
No.
It's your last meeting. Go for
I'd
it.
love to second
Let
it.
the
That's
record
what I'm
show
into.
that Skippy moved to adjourn.
I don't accept your friendly amendment.
We have a motion by Skippy and a second by Ward then. Can we have a roll call vote for adjournment, please?
Counselor Howenstein,
Yes.
Counselor Mesereau,
Again.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Thank you, Grassroots. We'll be back next week for more of your viewing pleasure.
I thought there was something else that you could have been doing tonight.
Next Tuesday? Next Tuesday? Tuesday. Next Tuesday, 3:30.
And tomorrow at 3:30, an electric pass for Kim
Tomorrow.
Fravor.